Hello, everybody. I'm John. I'm definitely an alcoholic. I'm glad that you're all here tonight. Ruthie is not feeling well tonight. Won't be here. And next week, she's going to a conference in Myrtle Beach, so she won't be here next week. So you're going to put up my crap for a couple weeks, but that's okay. We're on page 42. We're still talking about step 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves. In this chapter that we're about to finish up, we are looking for the insane thought you have before you pick up the first drink. We just finished up talking about a guy who was a high bottom drink, and he just couldn't figure out what's going on, and he thought he could do it on his own. He thought self-knowledge and willpower would do it, but it didn't. And now he came back, and he already admitted step 1, and now he's going to talk to 2 members of Alcoholics Anonymous. We're about second paragraph down, page 42.
2 of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me. They grinned, which I didn't like so much, and then asked me if I thought myself alcoholic, and if I were really licked this time. I had to concede both propositions.
See that? He did steps 1 and 2. There are conclusions you come to.
They piled on me heaps of evidence to the effect that an alcoholic mentality, such as I had exhibited in Washington, was a hopeless condition. They cited cases out of their own experience by the dozen. This process snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that I could do the job myself. Then they outlined the spiritual answer and program of action, which 100 of them had followed successfully.
They outlined this book you're reading right now, Program of Action. This is a program of action. Be a verb. Do something, no matter what it is. Don't just sit there. Do something, even if it's wrong. Do something.
Though I had been only a nominal churchman, their proposals were not intellectually hard to swallow.
Steps.
But the program of action, though entirely sensible, was pretty drastic. It meant I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out of the window. That was not easy. But the moment I made up my mind to go through with the process, I had the curious feeling that my alcoholic condition was relieved, as in fact it proved to be.
So it says he had to throw out several lifelong conceptions. What he means is he had to unlearn, and unlearn. It's like when we start this big book in the beginning, is keep your mind open like the first page of Alcoholics Anonymous. Blank. Unlearn, and learn. And be open.
Quite as important was the discovery that spiritual principles would solve all my problems. I have since been brought into a way of living infinitely more satisfying, and I hope more useful than the life I lived before. My old manner of life was by no means a bad one, but I would not exchange its best moments for the worst I have now. I would not go back to it even if I could. Fred's story speaks for itself. We hope it strikes home to thousands like him. He had felt only the first nip of the ringer. Most alcoholics have to be pretty badly mangled before they really commence to solve their problems. Many doctors and psychiatrists agree with our conclusions. One of these men, staff member of a world-renowned hospital,
that gentleman was a guy named Dr. Percy Pollock, and that hospital was Bellevue Hospital in New York.
Recently made this statement to some of us. What you say about the general hopelessness of the average alcoholic's plight is, in my opinion, correct. As to 2 of you men, whose stories I have heard, there is no doubt in my mind that you are 100% hopeless, apart from divine help. Had you offered yourselves as patients at this hospital, I would not have taken you if I had been able to avoid it. People like you are too heartbreaking. Though not a religious person, I have profound respect for the spiritual approach in such cases as yours. For most cases, there is virtually no other solution.
Now, Bill Wilson writes this book, and he's the type of person that he'll tell you what he's going to tell you, and then tell you what he told. So, this last paragraph sums up this whole chapter. And what this is step 2, the solution.
Once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink. Except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defense. His defense must come from a higher power.
God, grant me 5 seconds of sane thinking before I pick up that first drink or drug or whatever. That's what that means. Think of the consequences before you pick up that drink. God, grant me 5 seconds of sane thinking before I pick up that drink. Because we had some stories in this chapter the past couple weeks about what these people thought went through their mind before they picked up that first drink. Remember the guy who mixed whiskey with milk? That's crazy, especially it tastes nasty. Then the other one was the jaywalker, craziness. And then Fred, the high bottom drunk, thought he could do it on his own. This is what the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous helps us. Once you pick up that drink, you're gone. There's nothing they do. But what the 12 steps, what we're studying now, helps us with the obsession, the thought that you have before you pick up that drink. So now we're going to talk about step 2. We agnostics. Step 2 is come to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. I know when I came in, and there was a lot of new people in this room, and I'm sure you have the same feeling I had when I came in a while back. I grew up Catholic, and I was sort of forced to go to church and all that stuff. And when I started doing my thing and partying, I didn't think about church. All I thought about was my drink. And when bad things happened to me, I blamed it on God, that he wasn't there, that he was a bad person. And when I first came to AA, everyone was talking about God. And it freaked me out a little bit. But you got to realize that Alcoholics Anonymous, and I put out this thing, is not religious. We are spiritual. You find a power greater than yourself, and whatever you want to call that, as long as it ain't you, is okay. We're not religious. We are spiritual. Someone once told me that religion, and this is it sounded a little true to me, is for people who are afraid to go to hell. And for us, spirituality is for people who's already been there. And some of us has been through some hell. But what we're talking about in this chapter 4, is we agnostics. And Bill will talk about this. Agnostic means one who doubts the existence of God. All right? You doubt that. Now, most of us probably heard about atheists. An atheist is one who denies the existence of God. So what we're going to talk about right now is how to find a power greater than yourself, which will help you. And we'll get into that here in the next couple pages. So remember that. Agnostic, one who denies the existence of God or higher power, whatever you want to call it. An atheist is one who denies. We agnostics, it says right here, we try to become true believers. We know God exists and acts if he does. So, in this first paragraph, we're going to give a little bit of like a definition of an alcoholic. Now, there's no true definition in this book, but this is a little thing that it tells about. A couple questions you ask yourself if you are an alcoholic. 2 questions here.
Chapter 4. We agnostics. In the preceding chapters, you have learned something of alcoholism. We hope we have made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. If, when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely.
Question number 1. You can't quit entirely.
Or if when drinking, you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic.
Question number 2.
If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer.
That is your solution, a spiritual experience. We'll get into talk to that. 2 questions.
To one who feels he is an atheist or agnostic, such an experience seems impossible. But to continue as he is means disaster, especially if he is an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. To be doomed to an alcoholic death, or to live on a spiritual basis, are not always easy alternatives to face.
There's a couple, a little, you are or you aren't. You know, to be doomed to alcoholic death, and that could be anything. Go down the road, you die, and you hit someone, you kill someone, you die in an accident, you die of cirrhosis of the liver, you fall asleep smoking, and you burn yourself to death and your family. On and on about the experiences of an alcoholic death. Now, you can either do that or accept spiritual basis. One or the other. Now, us coming in here, and the number one symptom of disease is denial, and we ain't got it. Spiritual basis, accept spirituality. Then you ask yourself, well, how bad is that cirrhosis of the liver? You know, because you fear that when they talk about God. So, 2 alternatives. Doomed to alcoholic death or live on a spiritual basis. It's your choice. Step 1 and step 2 is what that is.
But it isn't so difficult. About half our original fellowship were of exactly that type. At first, some of us tried to avoid the issue, hoping against hope we were not true alcoholics. But after a while, we had to face the fact that we must find a spiritual basis of life, or else. Perhaps it is going to be that way with you. But cheer up. Something like half of us thought we were atheists or agnostics. Our experience shows that you need not be disconcerted. If a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago. But we found that such codes and philosophies did not save us, no matter how much we tried. We could wish to be moral. We could wish to be philosophically comforted. In fact, we could will these things with all our might, but the needed power wasn't there. Our human resources, as marshaled by the will, were not sufficient. They failed utterly. Lack of power, that was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves.
Step 1 and step 2. Lack of power. We can't do this on our own. We tried and we tried and tried. Lack of power is our dilemma. You had to find a power which you could live, and that had to be a power greater than ourselves. Whatever you choose, there's no wrong answer. Now, a lot of people come in AA and they think they hear about the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you talk about this meeting here, the big book study. A lot of people think, well, I'm going to come in and find about this, read this big book thing, and I'm going to quit drinking and drugging. Well, this next paragraph tells you exactly what this book you're reading tonight is all about. What this program of Alcoholics Anonymous is.
Obviously. But where and how were we to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem.
Do you hear that? The main object of this meeting and this book in Alcoholics Anonymous is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, that which not could, not would, that might, which will solve your problem. It's that simple. And we don't care what the damn problem is. Drinking, drugs, alcohol, anything. That power of greatness, once you find it and do the steps, it will solve your problem, no matter what it is. That's what this book is about, and what this meeting is and this program is about. To find the power greater than yourself.
That means we have written a book which we believe to be spiritual as well as moral. And it means, of course, that we are going to talk about God. Here, difficulty arises with agnostics.
You know, when I came in, and I told you I had a little problem with that word God, and a couple of members of AA, and it doesn't say it in here, it gave me a couple of acronyms. God is good, orderly direction, G-O-D. Or, right in here, a group of drunks, G-O-D. So, keep that in mind. Just a suggestion.
Many times we talk to a new man and watch his hope rise as we discuss his alcoholic problems and explain our fellowship. But his face falls when we speak of spiritual matters, especially when we mention God. For we have reopened a subject which our man thought he had neatly evaded or entirely ignored. We know how he feels. We have shared his honest doubt and prejudice. Some of us have been violently anti-religious. To others, the word God brought up a particular idea of him with which someone had tried to impress them during childhood. Perhaps we rejected this particular conception because it seemed inadequate. With that rejection, we imagined we had abandoned the God idea entirely. We were bothered with the thought that faith and dependence upon a power beyond ourselves was somewhat weak, even cowardly. We look upon this world of warring individuals, warring theological systems, and inexplicable calamity with deep skepticism. We looked askance at many individuals who claimed to be godly. How could a supreme being have anything to do with it all? And who could comprehend a supreme being anyhow? Yet in other moments, we found ourselves thinking, when enchanted by a starlit night, who then made all this? There was a feeling of awe and wonder, but it was fleeting and soon lost. Yes, we of agnostic temperament have had these thoughts and experiences. Let us make haste to reassure you. We found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God. Much to our relief, we discovered we did not need to consider another's conception of God. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and to effect a contact with him.
And that's when we went from religion to spirituality. You get to choose your own conception of God, no matter what that is. That swing set out there, a tree, maybe your sponsor, whatever you want, as long as it's not you. But they said earlier in the paragraph before, we have to keep an open mind. We at least have the willingness to come to believe in that power greater than yourself. That's all you need to start with, a willingness to change your mind about a higher power. Your own conception, no matter what that is.
As soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence, a spirit of the universe underlying the totality of things, we began to be possessed of a new sense of power and direction, provided we took other simple steps. We found that God does not make too hard terms with those who seek him. To us, the realm of spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding to those who earnestly seek. It is open, we believe, to all men. When therefore,
See, we don't need to actually find God because he ain't lost. We're the ones that lost. But if you look at it really, it's in the seeking that you will find him. And we'll get more into that. But willingness means a foundation of believing, and the cornerstone is the faith. And here, and probably next week, we'll hand out an arch. And the cornerstone of that arch is believing. Step 2. And I used to, I'm not right here and I can't turn my head, but I used to sit back there all the time. And you would say it's in the seeking that you find the power greater than yourself. And if you look along this wall over here, all right, and this is just what I observed, in my opinion, is as you'll see a higher power, which they see as Jesus. But look where everyone is looking at. They're seeking that higher power. Their eyes are focused on that. So remember that. It's in the seeking that you find the higher power.
When we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. This
Again,
applies too
your own
to other
conception.
spiritual expressions which you find in this book. Do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. At the start, this was all we needed to commence spiritual growth, to effect our first conscious relation with God as we understood him. Afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things which then seemed entirely out of reach. That was growth. But if we wished to grow, we had to begin somewhere. So we used our own conception, however limited it was. We needed to...
So now, this next paragraph, all of us tonight are actually going to do step 2. You ask yourself one question. Do I now believe, agnostic, or am I willing to believe, atheist, that there's a power greater than myself? That is, and then you have a second step promise.
Ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself?
Step 2.
As soon as a man can say that he does believe, or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on his way. It has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built.
Okay, and that's where we begin in step 2, our spiritual structure. Now it says right here, and this is very important, we did it a couple weeks ago, but there's more new people in here. And this is how you keep an open mind to spirituality. And we're going to talk about that now, and we're going to go to page 567. And I'm going to ask Mark to read for us, and I'm going to stop it. This is how you have a spiritual experience. 67. If you don't, listen along. Now this is talking about how you need to change. We're talking about this. Now, I don't have a remote control on how to stop Mark, but I'm going to push his buttons and stop him when I want to say something. So, 10% of us alcoholics, this is about spiritual awakening and spiritual experience. Bill Wilson, the founder, when he had that bright light and he saw God and he changed and the obsession was taken away, he had a sudden spiritual experience, which is sudden and profound. All right? That happens to about 10% of us. Most of us today, 90% have spiritual awakening where you change as you learn. And now, in this paragraph, we're talking about spirituality. And this is how you get to have a spiritual experience. All right? Go ahead, Mark.
All right. There's one there, 567. Spiritual experience. The term spiritual experience
Sudden,
and spiritual awakening
educational,
are used many times in this book, which upon careful reading shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself among them in many different forms. Yet it is true that our first printing gave many readers the impression that those personality changes or religious experiences must be in the nature of a sudden and spectacular upheavals. Happily for everyone, this conclusion is erroneous.
Hold on a minute, Mark. So erroneous means false. You don't have to have a spiritual awakening, but you have a slow journey. Now, in this next couple paragraphs, what we're talking about when we have a spiritual awakening is we need to change our whole. And my father told me, you got to change more than just your breath. You got to change your whole rotten way of life. And this is what they're talking about when it comes to having a spiritual awakening. We've got to change. There's many words, and I'll just say change when Mark gets to it. Go ahead, Mark.
In the first few chapters, a number of sudden revolutionary changes are described. Though it was not our intention to create such an impression, many alcoholics have nevertheless concluded that in order to recover, they must acquire an immediate and overwhelming God consciousness,
Change.
followed at once by a vast change in feeling and outlook. Among a rapidly growing memberships of thousands of alcoholics, such transformations,
Change.
though frequent, are by no means the rule. Most of our experiences are what the psychologist William James calls the educational variety.
Hold on a minute, Mark. Educational variety, that means you change as you learn. And I changed as I learned the steps from 1 through 12. Slow and gradual. Go ahead, Mark.
Because it develops slowly over a period of time. Quite often, friends of the newcomer are aware of the difference long before he is himself. He finally realizes that he has undergone a profound alteration in his reaction to life.
Change.
That such a change could hardly have been brought about by himself alone. What often takes place in a few months could seldom have been accomplished by years of self-discipline. With few exceptions, our members find that they have tapped an unexpected inner resource, which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves. Most of us think this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is in essence a spiritual experience, or more religious members call it God consciousness.
Hold on a minute, Mark. So they say, most of this say it's sort of, and I heard it too in the rooms, it's a God thing. You know, it's more than a coincidence, it's a God thing. Go ahead, Mark.
Most emphatically, we wish to say that any alcoholic capable of honestly facing his problems in the light of our experience can recover.
Stop right there. You hear that? It says right here that any alcoholic capable of honestly facing the problems in the light of our experience can recover. Now here comes a little stipulation. What's that, Mark?
Provided he does not close his mind to all spiritual concepts. He can only be defeated by an attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial.
Okay, he says you have to keep an open mind when it comes to spirituality. When your mind snaps shut, like some people say, 1 and 1 is 3, and that's the answer. I don't care what you say. The same thing to the people coming here. I don't want to hear nothing about God. Their mind snaps shut. But in order to recover, you have to keep an open mind when it comes to spiritual concepts. Go ahead, Mark.
You find that no one need have difficulty with the spirituality of the program. Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are essentials of recovery, but these are indispensable.
Okay. Now, you ever hear about how it works? The how of the program is right there. Honesty, willingness, and open-mindedness. They are essentials for recovery, but these are indispensable. Now, this next paragraph is a guy. First, the book says Herbert Spencer, but we found out later it's a guy named earlier than that, a guy named William Paley, and that was in 1794. And what this means is this next paragraph is the same thing I've been saying all thing in this spiritual experience thing is keep an open mind. Go ahead, Mark.
There is a principle which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, which cannot fail to keep a man everlasting ignorant. That principle is contempt prior to investigation.
Contempt means an attitude to something which despises as worthless, insignificant, or vile. Total disregard. So contempt prior to going, and I said that already, is I know the answer and that's it. So what they're telling us to do in this, when it comes to spirituality in this program, keep an open mind. Learn, learn, and learn. And even as I've been around for a little while and a couple other people here, no matter how long I've been here, I got to keep it on mind and I got to remain teachable. Because if I think I got this thing licked, got to answer everything, I'm in trouble. I got to remain teachable. That's what that says. Okay, now we're going to go back to the page 47 again and talk more about spirituality and step 2.
A footnote. Please be sure to read Appendix 2 on spiritual experience.
We did that.
That was great news to us, for we had assumed we could not make use of spiritual principles unless we accepted many things on faith, which seemed difficult to believe. When people presented us with spiritual approaches, how frequently did we all say, "I wish I had what that man has. I'm sure it would work, if I could only believe as he believes." But I cannot accept as surely true the many articles of faith which are so plain to him. So it was comforting to learn that we could commence at a simpler level. Besides a seeming inability to accept much on faith, we often found ourselves handicapped by obstinacy, sensitiveness, and unreasoning prejudice. Many of us have been so touchy that even casual reference to spiritual things made us bristle with antagonism. This sort of thinking had to be abandoned. Though some of us resisted, we found no great difficulty in casting aside such feelings. Faced with alcoholic destruction, we soon became as open-minded on spiritual matters as we had tried to be on other questions. In this respect, alcohol was a great persuader. It finally beat us into a state of reasonableness. Sometimes this was a tedious process. We hope no one else will be prejudiced for as long as some of us were. The reader may still ask why he should believe in a power greater than himself. We think there are good reasons. Let us have a look at some of them.
Well, we're going to take a look at some of them next week. We're going to stop right there tonight. And next week we're going to get in more about step 2 and finding a power greater than yourself. And also, next week, I believe we're going to find out where you find God in the next couple pages. So what we stressed in tonight, and I believe it, is to keep an open mind and to find a power greater than yourself. And if you doubt the existence of God, keep an open mind. Because I'll tell you right now, it works. It really does. With that, I'm turning it back over to Cookie. And one more thing, I want to thank Cookie for chairing this month. Thanks, Cookie.